Welcome to Top 1%er Podcast, where we don't just focus on money and wealth, but all the other aspects of life that are very important. We do our best to focus on creating a life by design. And so that's why we're here. We want to figure out a way to share all the things that we've learned with all of you to help in whatever aspect of life that might be. This podcast today is actually part two of one we just finished. Adam just spent some time asking a bunch of questions to me. This is Adam Nelson. He and I have been work buddies, but really a strong friendship for the past 20 years now, right?
It's been forever.
So if you didn't watch the first podcast, go back, watch that. Adam spent some time going into our relationship a little bit, but just kind of continuing on what we were talking about. We heard about me, we heard about my story, and it's been, you have accomplished so much in your life. It's been 20 years since you started this, your career or whatever that is. But you have developed into such an amazing person honestly, over the past like 5 years I've worked with you. And, the first 10 years working in the job, I didn't get to know you as well as like the last 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
We worked together, but we weren't like super close the whole time.
Yeah.
But even before that, I'm curious about your upbringing a little bit. I want to know, what did your parents teach you and instill in you at such a young age to get you to where you're at? Because I know for a fact it doesn't just happen by chance.
No, and kind of like what we said with your story, Bron, it's really hard to relate with somebody's hero story where they're at the top and they've been doing something for 20 years and they've made it, right? It's easier to relate with somebody's struggles and somebody's real story, and that's where most people are at in life. They're in the grind phase.
Yeah.
They're in the building phase, which we've been in the last 2 decades, right? We've been doing for the last 20 years,
I
and
feel like we're still grinding.
for sure we're still grinding. But hindsight 2020 is a funny thing where we're in a position now where we can actually mentor and teach, people that are in their 20s and need a path and direction. And for me, very similar to your story, I grew up in Idaho. Okay. I'm a farm boy in Idaho. Everybody that meets me and gets to know me thinks I'm from California, surf boy, whatever, with
You
blonde
do
hair.
put off that vibe.
I don't know why. I'm farm boy from Idaho. Grew up driving a truck, cattle farm. I think just understanding where I come from and being able to look back on the principles that I learned from the farm and from my dad, I can really see how that led to the life that I have. And
So I'm curious, what was the farm? I didn't grow up on a farm. What type of effort has to be put in for you? Like, what was that lifestyle like as a kid?
growing up on the farm, I always told my wife if we hate living in Dallas ever, we'll just move back to Idaho to the farm. Like
You loved
it
it
was
that much?
it was a great uprising. I feel like the farmer lifestyle is very difficult with just stress. I think it's a very high stress job, and the uncontrollables, the things that are truly out of your control, like the weather and drought and stuff that is genuinely out of your control, which is very stressful. I can see that. Tractors breaking down, cows getting out of their fences, like crazy amount of stress that I see now that my dad's 72 and he is still farming to this day. And I don't think he farms strictly because he can't retire, but I think he farms because he can't stop working. He enjoys working, right? And so growing up on a farm, I had 2 other brothers, so I had great examples of what hard work was. And seeing my dad and my brothers just growing up, it was always bragging rights at the dinner table. This is from a young age. We'd come back to the dinner table and we would brag about who worked the hardest today. That was our conversation. And so we'd say, "Oh man, I'm so tired. I was up at 6 o'clock. I came home at 8 o'clock. I moved this. I did this. I did this chore. I accomplished these things." And it was bragging rights on who worked the hardest. And my brothers would brag about what they did to my dad. And then I wanted to be part of that. I was like, no way that chump brother's going to outwork me. I'm going to outwork him tomorrow for those bragging rights. I wanted my dad to be proud of my work ethic, which is crazy, right?
Dude, so that, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit more, but dude, you had a competitive drive in you from such a young age? Because you have it now. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen you now, but man, that's probably where it started and stemmed from. That's so cool.
100%. And I didn't realize this till 10 years, 15 years into my sales career. And I go back home for like a week. And again, my dad's almost in his 60s, like 60s, 70s. And I go back home and my brothers are there and we decide to start helping out with some chores. And we get back to the dinner table and my brothers are successful in their own careers. And like it doesn't stop. We all are bragging about
No.
who worked the hardest. And what's crazy is that my dad, almost in his 70s at this time, and when we were young, is still the hardest worker out of all of us. He wouldn't ever let his boys outwork him. Like, not a chance. Like, I was always hearing the tractor on turning on in the morning before I was out of bed, and I would get home for supper before my dad, like all the time. Like it's a grind, and I learned that from my dad. And I don't know if he did that intentionally on just setting that standard for his boys, but he got it from somewhere, maybe from his dad or something like that. And I'm eternally grateful for that. Other than that, my dad didn't really encourage us to be farmers. Like, for first of all, I'm allergic to the farm. Literally everything about the farm I'm allergic to, like allergies. And so
Yeah, you do get allergies.
it's so bad. And so hay fever, wheat, alfalfa, dust, whatever it is, mice, I'm allergic to. So either I'm getting allergy shots and Allegra 24/7, or I got to move away from the farm. So I never really wanted to be a farmer growing up. One of my other brothers didn't want to be a farmer. He wanted to be in business as well. And one of my brothers is taking over the farm. But for us growing up, he never encouraged us to be a farmer. But I did have, it's kind of like the rich dad, poor dad story. I had uncles on my mom's side of the family that were eye surgeons and doctors, and they lived in incredible houses in Arizona and amazing houses in Las Vegas,
Wow.
and drove Aston Martins and BMWs. And like, I remember going on vacations to their houses and being like, no way am I going to be a farmer. I'm going to be a doctor, right? I'm going to be this. Like, that was what was super motivating. That was the first thing that I saw in my life where I was like inspired by, right?
At a young age, you knew you didn't want to be on a farm. You wanted to aspire to be
A
a
doctor,
big wig,
something.
right? Someone where everyone looked up to you, or not up to you, but would look at that person and say, he's made it.
I wanted that lifestyle so bad. I remember growing up, I was attracted to cool cars. I was attracted to big houses. My dad didn't ever tell me this. My brothers really didn't teach me this. I just wanted it. I was just like, that's what I want. That's what my life's going to be. And it wasn't ever, I'm going to be a professional athlete or anything like that. But it was like, I'm going to probably be a doctor or something to have that level of success. And I thought that was my path. I had college sports and I had, the farm, and I had all these things that probably created this work ethic, this drive, this competitive nature in myself that helped me in my sales career. But going from the farm to college and playing college baseball, I started these courses, chemistry and biology and these pre-dental. I decided I was going to be a dentist.
Okay.
And I started these pre-dental classes. And I remember just going to the chemistry lab for 6 hours in a day, and literally was like, I cannot do this for another 10 years. Like, there's no way I'm going to specialize and be an orthodontist, or there's no way I can't do this. And uh,
How many years of college were you into it at this time?
I had my generals done and I started my chemistry, my pre-dental. So
Okay.
I was probably my third year in college, and I was like, there's no way I can do this. And so at this point in my career, or in my life, I felt like I didn't have a path. There was no longer baseball pushing me and to work on myself and self-development. There was no longer this drive to be this doctor or dentist or anything like that. And I felt like I did not have a path. And it was the worst feeling ever. Like, I did not know what I wanted to be. I didn't know what I could be to achieve that same vision that I had as a little kid of
Yeah.
like that house and that car. But still to this day, it intrigued me, and it still does intrigue me when I see a Porsche 911 turbo driving down the road, or a nice car, or see a nice house. The thought always comes to my mind, what does that guy do? And could I do that?
So it reminds me of a book you recommended to me. It
Which
was
one?
Millionaire Fast Lan.
Yep.
And you read this book and you recommended it to me. And I mean, that's an incredible book, by the way. If you haven't read that book, go get it. It's amazing. And that, I feel like that summed up you. You wanted though, the nice car and that kind of thing, but that that book really teaches how you can go get that and why it's so important to have it now, not when you're retired at 65 years old, right?
Right.
You wanted it now.
I wanted the lifestyle in my 20s. I did not want it in my 60s.
Yeah.
I didn't want to retire and be able to get the Porsche. I wanted it now. And so at this point in my career, 21 years old, I was introduced to door-to-door sales, just like you were. And I was recruited on the aspect of come make $20,000 this summer. And I was working in a call center, a Dish Network call center, and I was making like $7.50 an hour. And it was literally the first job I had other than farming, the first job I had where I did the least amount of work possible to make sure I got my paycheck on Friday and I didn't get fired.
Okay.
And I hated waking up in the morning to go to this job. I hated clocking in for the job. I hated my manager, who I knew wasn't making great money. It was a dead end job. I knew I wasn't going to be there for a long time. And I remember a friend of mine, similar to you, just saying, "Hey, do you want to go make $20,000 this summer?" And I was like, yes. I was the easiest recruit ever because I wasn't happy with what I had. I wasn't making good money. I was miserable. And somebody said, "Do you want to go do commission-based sales, door-to-door sales, and make 20 grand this summer?" I didn't even ask how. I was just like, yes, where do I got to go? I was literally the easiest recruit. And so I went out my first summer. They shipped me off to Colorado to just learn sales, door-to-door sales. And again, if you didn't watch the first podcast, door-to-door sales it's not an MLM. It's knock on a door. You have a product and service. You have to talk to a stranger and overcome a problems with a solution, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of what we train our guys is there's a problem. You have to have a solution, make conversation, make a good connection, transition into the home, do a presentation to build a quote, and then close. And I was able to get involved with this and learn the skill. And as soon as I got involved with this, I learned the skill that I could see that sales were starting to come in and I was starting to make commissions. I was making $400 a day and $800 a day, but I was around people making a six-figure income doing this job. And I was able to look across the room at the top sales guy in the office, which was the manager, and say, I can outsell him. I will absolutely outsell him. I will learn this job and I will outwork him and I will outstudy him until I'm better than him and making more money than him. And it was a feeling that just burned inside of me that I was so excited about, right? And it took me back to the farm where nobody's going to outwork me. It took me back to sports where I could look across the room and size somebody up and say, I'm going to beat you. Like I'm going to take your position. And all of that came together in sales in this commission-based world, which just really intrigued me.
So fast forward uh, to the end of the summer, because we all want to know, what did you end up making your first summer?
So that's what's crazy. I didn't even understand the pay scale I was on. Like I didn't know how to make 20 grand. I just knew I was making like 400, 800 bucks a day. And I made $65,000 my first summer.
Wow.
So I get home. My
You're,
goal,
yeah,
my
you're
goal is to
pretty,
make 20 grand,
yeah.
right? And
What did your parents think?
that's what's crazy is going out to the summer. I had a moment where I laid in my bed and I kind of had this visual moment where I was like, if I made 20 grand this summer, I could buy a 4-year-old used BMW M3 and my world just changed. I lit up. I was just like, I could afford that car. That's a $400 a month car payment, 20 grand. I could afford that car. I could pay for school and I could tell my dad to cut off my $500 a month allowance. Like, don't send me any money for food. I got you, dad. Like, I'm good. And so I remember that was my motivation. That was my vision going out to my first summer. I came home and I made 65 grand. Now imagine what this 21-year-old kid feels like with 60 grand.
Tell me you still bought the older BMW.
No, so I started test driving all these cars. I go into a Porsche dealership because the Porsche Cayenne or the Porsche Cayman S just barely came out. Never been this first model of this car comes out. Porsche Cayman S comes out and I'm in love. I'm like, screw the BMW. I'm gonna go get a Porsche. It's a $67,000 car. I go in, they won't even let me test drive it. And I was like, because I'm 21-year-old kid, I was like, I have the money. They asked me to see my bank account. So I showed them my bank account. 60 grand in my bank. And he's like, okay, here's a test drive. So he let me test drive my Porsche for the first time. And we go to the finances, and I can't qualify for this car because I don't have enough established credit. I've
Life,
never had a car payment.
life hits.
Yeah. So I call my dad and I'm like, hey, dad, I'm about to buy this car. I can afford the payments, but I need a cosigner. So my dad, I don't know why he did this. He co-signed with his 20-year-old kid on this
I
car.
know why he did it.
Why did he do it?
Because you were bragging about being the hardest worker at the dinner table, and he knew that you were going to figure out a way to make this work. I really, as a dad, I don't think he even questioned it because
That's what's
of
crazy.
who
He
you
didn't.
are.
He did not question it, which is nuts to me. Like I still can't fathom what my dad was thinking when he got that phone call that I need you to co-sign on this Porsche. So
Maybe because it's a Porsche, he might be like, oh,
yeah,
but still,
right. I
he
showed
knows
him,
he knows your work ethic. He knows what you're capable
and
of.
I showed him my money, and I showed him what my plan was year two. I said, year two, I'm gonna go make 100 grand, dad. And I knew he believed me. I said, I'm gonna make $100,000 next summer with this job. And so he co-signed on it, and I got this car. And then immediately when I got this car, I started seeing other people that I'm around, people making six-figure income. They're not just buying cars, they're also buying real estate. So next summer, I was like, I have to buy real estate. I don't know why. Nobody's teaching me why, but I need to buy real estate. So I go out the next summer. I do, you talked about it a little bit, team building. My manager told me I need to build a team. So team building means you hire a kid, and it's usually your buddy, and you train him how to do this job. You motivate him, you train him, you provide a good working culture that people can be successful in. And if they sell and have success, you can make an override off that as well, right? You make
Yeah.
an override off of every sell, just like a car dealership or whatever, right? It's not an MLM. It's teach them how to sell. If they sell, you get paid. So my manager tells me to sign 12 kids, 12 guys. And so I go and I call up 12 of my buddies. And I said, I'm taking you to Outback Steakhouse. I'm going to take you to dinner. And I showed them I made 65 grand last summer, and I'm going to take you out. I'm going to teach you how to do the same thing. Long story short, I take 20 guys out that next summer. 22 years old now, and I go make 100 grand. I made a six-figure income. I did better in personal sales, and I came home and I bought my first rental property, right? And got a taste of that, and got a taste of what it's like to buy a rental property. And this is in 2009 when you could do a stated income loan. Like
Mm.
I showed them my bank statements.
That was some good years
Those
for a
are
lot of
some
people.
good years.
Turned into bad real fast.
Yeah. So all they asked was for my income statements. I showed them my income, and they're like, "Here's your house." And I bought my first piece of real estate. Fast forward to right now, it's crazy that these little, I like to call them monumental moments, right? It's buying the car, it's buying the first house that I didn't even know what that would turn into 20 years later, which is a whole nother podcast on what that one investment's turned into now.
Yeah.
But, or I guess 14 years later. But what's crazy is looking back, hindsight 2020, these little baby steps that I took have just compounded over time, right? And I kept finding ways to improve my personal self. Like, how am I going to get better as a sales rep? How am I going to get better as a leader? How am I going to get better physically? How am I going to get better, obviously, emotionally, as I soon got married and started having a family and kids? I had to keep improving and reinventing myself and getting better. And every year I personally improved myself, my income also increased. I increased my income 10 years in a row by over $30,000. And so 10 years straight, just kept getting better, kept getting better. My income kept going up, $30,000 plus every single year. And I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody telling me what I should do with this money. I didn't have anybody telling me that I needed to push harder or work harder or do this. And I just ended up after making good, hard choices day after day after day and stacking days and doing the right thing as often as I could, that I created this, what we trademarked, a life by design, right? Accidentally
Yeah.
did the right things, and we created this life by design.
So can I ask you another question though? Once you've gotten to a position, because there's always going to be money out there, right? And there's always avenues to go make it. Fortunately, because we live in America, we have that ability to do that. But once the money became, and maybe it didn't, maybe money was always the drive for you, but I feel like there might be something else. I want to know what else has driven you other than money to get to where you're at now. Because I'm sure you were okay, like the amount of money you were making 3 years into this sales job, you had enough,
Yeah.
right? And you probably had enough for your wife and your family and your kids for a long time. But after the money, like once you were good there, what drives you? Like what's the main thing that's driven you for all these years?
I think the biggest thing for me that was actually always my driving force, it was never the money. Money was always the byproduct of being my best version, being my best self. And so my goal was always to just be the best at what I did, right? So we talk about in our 30-day challenge, one of the books that I review is Good to Great, right? And good is the enemy of great. And when I read this book, it lit me up. And it always talked about finding passion in what you do, right? And it defines what passion is. Most people go their whole lives looking for something they can be passionate about, and they're searching and changing jobs every year, 2 years. They're just looking for something they can be passionate about. What they don't understand is passion is not something that you find and stumble on. Passion is something that you create. Passion means that you believe you're selling or doing the best product or offering that you can do in your class. Okay. You can be passionate about it. If you believe I have the best product or offering in what I'm doing, that's the first part of being passionate. Okay. And I felt like we had that where the company we were with. Number two, I believe that I can become the best in my field or in my industry. I truly believe that I could be number one, not only in just my office, but in my region or in my company, that if I kept learning and applying myself, I could become the best. Number three is, do you love the people that you work with? And I genuinely loved the company and the people that I worked with. And when you have those three things together, that's where you find passion, right? That's when I love the people I work with. I'm focusing on personal growth and development to become the best. And I believe I can be passionate about this product or service or offering that I have to my clients or that I'm offering, because if you can't believe in that, like, you can't really get too passionate about that or get really behind it. And I believed I had all three of those. And when I read that, that lit me up. And so my strive was always to just be number one. Like my goal is to beat you, right? Like always, it was our offices competing. It was us.
And just a disclaimer, he did, and he is.
Not always. There's years you beat me, and sometimes we'd have new guys come in that were just better, and I had to fight to beat them. And my drive was always to just be the best. That drive, not only for just myself, but when I got married, my wife married that person. She married the guy that was the top sales guy, the top sales manager. And I always told her that's who I am. And I always wanted to be that for her. I always wanted to be the most dependable person in her life, right? That there's no way I'm going to let Bron Thewison outwork me or outsell me, even though you did some years, right? Like she knew that was always a goal of mine, but it wasn't just for my sales career and my sales guys. It wasn't just for myself. It was also for my family. Like they had an expectation for me that I need to put my best foot forward and improve on myself so I can provide them a better quality of life. And the byproduct of that was an increase of my income every year because I just kept getting better. I kept focusing on myself. I kept focusing on setting bigger, scarier goals, which often meant sacrifices. There was a summer where I set the biggest goal I've ever made for the off season, where it's during the school season, that I would sell 300 accounts. And I told my wife, I'm going to get an apartment in Texas and I'm going to go there once a month for a week and for 8 months straight. And I'm going to do these sales blitzes. I'm going to get better at this job. That was sacrifices for her and for me. But I did that to inspire my guys. I did that to inspire myself. I did that to help to bless my family financially and that kind of stuff and provide them a better financial situation. That was required sacrifices. And she understood the sacrifices we're making in order for me to be the best version of myself and making these big, hard choices and big goals that are scary, but even bigger actions to go accomplish those goals, bigger efforts to accomplish those goals.
So I've known you for this long, And I genuinely learn something from you when I sit down with you. Like maybe not every time, because a lot of times, we'll do a late night movie,
Yeah.
but I genuinely will learn something when I can sit down with you. Today, my biggest takeaway from your story was like, I don't think I realized your work ethic is as deep rooted as it is. And that has been such a strong drive for you all of these years. I mean, I knew you worked hard, but I had no idea internally what you were doing
Internally,
to make sure you were the absolute best.
internally, you were never gonna beat me, Bron. Right?
That's right. That's right.
Just teasing.
But that's huge. That is a massive takeaway. Like, I mean, we can always work smarter, and there's all these people will say these things, but that hard work isn't, the key for everything. But dude, if that is your foundation, like it was for you, there is no way you don't go out and succeed. There's no way.
That's
And
just,
dude, I think that's awesome.
yeah.
I love it.
I feel like, again, going back to the planner, these are principles we talk about in our planner, right? Like
Yeah.
we talk about our craft a lot. So part of being your best version of yourself is these relationships with your family. It's improving physically and emotionally and that kind of stuff, but also improving in your craft. And a lot of times we talk about being intentional with your goals, with your craft, pushing your limits, setting goals to be number one, or setting big goals that are big accomplishments. But it's not just the goal that's important, it's the actions behind the goal. And none of this is possible if you can't visualize it and plan it and then take proper actions, which a lot of times you need a planner. You need to write this stuff down or it
Yeah.
never happens. It's just a wish at that point, right? It's not a real tangible thing. And I always wrote them down. I always, had an execution plan, reverse engineered everything. If I was going to do 300 preseason sales, how many did I have to sell in a month? How is this going to be possible? I'd write it down and I'd share these goals with other people so that they became my new reality. And I had to now take action and execute them. So, another plug for our planner, if you're going to live this type of lifestyle and achieve this level of success, it is done intentionally. And you have to be able to construct your life by design, written and planned out, or it does not happen.
You won't. You'll just go where the waves and the wind takes you. Really, you have to be intentional.
Yep.
No question. Dude, thanks, Adam. That was money. There's a lot of things that hopefully we were able to capture from this and take forward. So I'm grateful you shared your story in depth. I don't think I've ever actually heard it like that. So
Don't mess with farm boys. They're the hardest workers you'll know.
I will not. I will not.